Hi guys, in today's lesson I'm taking you through the 7 modes of the diatonic scale. This is quite a confusing topic, but I'm not just going to throw at you a bunch of chords and expect you to understand. I'm going to share with you what I think is the best way to develop the sensitivity in the ear to recognize all of the different flavors in the modes. We can build all of the modes using the white notes on the piano, so the notes with no sharps or flats. And as we construct each of the modes, we're going to compare them like for like. Now before we get started, there's a couple of very important distinctions to make. The first concept to understand is the concept of latching. And that is, whenever you hear a chord for a long time, let's say C major, your ears become used to that sound, it becomes your point of reference. And even if you play different chords in between, our ears still crave that initial C. It wants to resolve, it wants to hear that back as the resolution. So it becomes your point of reference. You could call it the home key, you call it the tonic, the root, but the point is there's a magnetic pull to that chord. And that brings us to the second point, which is instrumental to understanding the modes, is the concept of shifting that tonic note up the scale. Each of the 7 notes of the diatonic scale takes a turn at being the tonic note, the point of reference. The Ionian mode is commonly known as the major scale, and although there are other major scales within the modes, this one is the most well known, so it's just referred to as the major scale. So it's the scale that we most easily recognize. And it sounds very cheerful, it sounds peaceful. Notice how that B over the C major chord has this kind of joyful sound, hopeful maybe. It's expansive, it's a major mode. Going over into the Dorian mode, which is a minor mode, what we have to do in order to acclimate to the new tonic, to the new home key, we have to spend some time with that D and really absorb that sound in order for our ears to latch to the new point of reference. Dorian mode has a completely different color. It's kind of melancholic, and that B sounds really bittersweet. It doesn't sound expansive and peaceful and joyful. It's much more mellow. As we continue shifting the tonic note up the scale, we get to E, and that's the Phrygian mode. And the Phrygian mode is a very distinctive scale. We get this flamenco flavor. I'm still only playing the natural notes. Now notice how, if I play that B over the E minor, it sounds like a melody note. it sits within the chord, so it sounds very neutral. It has no strong flavor, really. The Lydian is a very special mode, and it's slightly twangy, but it's also very etheric, very bright. Now let's go back to that B. Etheric. The Mixolydian scale is often associated with blues, and it's a very flexible scale. It takes chromatic passing notes really well. Now notice how that B, which sometimes sounded mellow, bittersweet, other times sounded joyful, in this scale it sits on the chord. It's a chord tone. It's actually the third of the tonic, the G. The B is the third, the major third, and it sits just above the blue note. So it's very malleable. And it's got this cheeky kind of an effect. Almost as if you were asking a question. The Aeolian scale, also known as the natural minor scale, or the relative minor scale, it's playing the notes of C major but starting on A and ending on A. It has a somber, kind of a serious sound. Slightly melancholic, but not as melancholic as the Dorian. Going on to the final mode of the major scale, that's the Locrian mode. This is a very peculiar mode. It sits over a diminished triad, or over the chord of B minor 7 flat 5. And it also happens to be the hardest mode to latch your ears to. It somehow just wants to go elsewhere. You really have to spend a long time getting your ears used to that sound. there you go, guys. Those are the 7 modes. If I were to summarize, the Ionian sounds round and joyful, happy. The Dorian has that bittersweet 6th. The Phrygian has a very strong flamenco accent. The Lydian has that kind of bright and etheric sharp 4th. The Mixolydian is kind of cheeky, bluesy, and jazzy. The Aeolian is dark and somber and a little sad, melancholic. And the Locrian is just a weird one. It just is kind of dark, but it also has this unpolished beauty. If you'd like to continue learning the modes with me, head over to patreon.com/outguitar. There's lots of lessons, backing tracks, tabs, you name it. Please don't forget to subscribe to this channel, and I look forward to our next lesson. Bye bye for now.